The Galactic Council sat in their grand chamber, a vast room filled with holographic displays and floating seats. Leaders from hundreds of worlds gathered around a massive table, their eyes fixed on the incoming transmission. The message came from a distant planet, a peaceful human world on the edge of the galaxy. The warning was simple, yet chilling. Prepare. The invaders are coming. The Council's chairperson, a tall alien with smooth blue skin and glowing eyes, stood to address the group. His voice was calm, almost dismissive. "We have received many such warnings before," he said, his tone suggesting that he had seen it all. "This is nothing to concern us. Earth is a primitive species. They cannot pose a threat." A murmur of agreement spread through the council, their voices a mix of disbelief and indifference. Humanity, after all, was a young species. They had barely reached the stars, and most had never encountered an alien race. The galaxy knew them as a species of peace, scattered across various planets, but not unified in their efforts. The council had no reason to fear them. But one member of the council, a smaller, nervous creature from a distant system, raised a trembling hand. What if they have grown stronger? Their fleet may be bigger than we think." The chairperson turned his glowing eyes toward the nervous alien, his expression unreadable. "I understand your concern, but we must remember the balance of power. We are the superior race. Our forces outnumber theirs by 1,000-fold. They are no threat to us." The discussion continued for hours, with some council members suggesting they send a small team to Earth to investigate, while others dismissed the idea entirely. In the end, the council decided on a course of inaction. They were too powerful, too confident in their dominance. They saw no reason to take the warning seriously. But far away on Earth, things were very different. Earth's leaders had received the same warning, but their reaction was entirely different. Unlike the council, they knew their species well. They understood their own strengths and weaknesses, and they knew the truth. Humanity was not a species that would lie down and accept defeat. As the galaxy laughed at their warning, the human governments began to prepare. Hidden deep within Earth's underground facilities, ancient military programs were awakened. Generations of soldiers trained for an enemy they had never seen were called into action. The world's defenses were reinforced, and new weapons were tested. The citizens of Earth, though unaware of the full scope of the threat, felt the tension in the air. There was a sense of unease, a quiet readiness for something unknown. Back at the council, the leaders had already moved on to other matters. They were focused on trade agreements, resource allocations, and political maneuvering. The alien races that made up the council were content with their established dominance, confident that their advanced technology and ancient history gave them an edge over the younger species of the galaxy. The thought that a species as young as humanity could challenge them seemed laughable. But the invasion came faster than anyone expected. The first sign of the alien force was a flash in the sky. Massive ships, descending upon the outer colonies of humanity. The alien ships were unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. Their sleek, black surfaces shimmered in the light, reflecting no color. The ships moved with an eerie silence, appearing as if from nowhere, and before anyone could react, they struck. The colonies fell quickly, overwhelmed by the precision and power of the alien forces. The first reports were filled with fear and confusion. How could this happen? How could these mysterious invaders break through human defenses so easily? The Galactic Council's members gathered once more, this time in urgent haste. The chairperson was no longer calm, his voice sharp with panic. "This is a mistake," he said, his eyes darting around the room. "We've underestimated them. We've made a grave error." For the first time, the council saw the danger they had dismissed so carelessly. The human colonies were not as defenseless as they had believed. The alien invaders had struck fast and hard, but humanity had something the council had not anticipated: resilience. Humanity's response was swift. They sent distress signals across the galaxy, and ships from Earth began to mobilize. The council's leaders exchanged uneasy glances. Some of them whispered among themselves, wondering how they could have been so blind. The human response was faster than expected. The human ships, though small in number compared to the vast alien forces, fought with an intensity the Council had never seen before. They were tactical, precise, and relentless. One of the Council members, a member of the warlike species that had always prided itself on its combat prowess, looked out the window at the holographic map of the galaxy. Their response is unlike anything we've seen. They're organized. They're fighting back. The Council had assumed that the humans, being so young and inexperienced, would crumble at the first sign of danger. But instead, they had done the unthinkable. They had organized, fought back, and sent a clear message to the invaders. Humanity would not be conquered. The alien forces, still not fully understanding the depth of human resolve, began to make mistakes of their own. They underestimated the human ability to adapt and survive. They underestimated humanity's intelligence, the sharpness of their minds, and their ability to learn from every battle. In every skirmish, the humans adapted, improved, and fought smarter. The chairperson stood up, his voice shaky now. "We have miscalculated. Humanity is not what we thought. They will not be so easily defeated. We must act quickly." The Council tried to make decisions, but fear and doubt had already crept into their minds. They had underestimated humanity's capacity for warfare, for survival. They had made their mistake, and now they had to face the consequences. The once cocky leaders of the Galactic Council now found themselves scrambling for solutions. The war was no longer a matter of if, but when, and humanity had made it clear that they would fight until the very end. What had started as a quiet warning had now become a galaxy-wide crisis. On Earth, the preparation continued. Every corner of the planet was mobilizing, from the leaders to the ordinary citizens. Everyone knew that the battle for their survival had begun. The war was not just for Earth, it was for the future of the galaxy, and humanity had shown that they would fight for it. Back in the Council chamber, the once united front of the galaxy's leaders now seemed fractured. No longer did they feel invincible. Humanity had proven that even the most powerful forces in the galaxy could be challenged. The Council's mistake had been made, and now they had to face the reality of a galaxy that would never look at humanity the same way again. The question now was not whether humanity would survive. It was how the galaxy would respond to them. The Galactic Council's confidence was beginning to crumble. For centuries, they had ruled over the galaxy, their dominance unquestioned. The numerous species that made up the Council had long ago reached a consensus. They were the superior races, the pinnacle of civilization. They believed that the galaxy's fate rested in their hands, and that no species, especially one as young and inexperienced as humanity, could challenge their power. But the arrival of the alien invaders, the ones they had so arrogantly dismissed, was a wake-up call, one they were not prepared for. As the Council members gathered once again in their vast chamber, the gravity of their mistake became apparent. The room, once filled with the hum of diplomacy and calculated debates, was now thick with tension. The chairperson, a towering figure of pale green skin and sharp angular features, stood before them, his posture rigid. His usually calm demeanor had been replaced by a sense of urgency that resonated through the room. "They're pushing us back," he said, his voice steady but filled with unease. "The human colonies have held their ground longer than we expected. We must reassess our strategy." Across the table, a representative from the Sinar race, known for their ancient wisdom, spoke up. "We cannot deny it any longer. The humans are far more formidable than we thought. They are adapting faster than we anticipated. Every time we engage them, they learn from the encounter and improve." A murmur spread through the room. The representatives, many of whom had previously mocked the idea that humanity could pose any threat, now looked at one another with apprehension. A member of the Drak species, known for their warrior culture, leaned forward, his claws scraping the table's surface. "This is not just a threat to their colonies, It is a threat to the entire galaxy. Their war machines are relentless. They fight with a tenacity we haven't seen in millennia. Another council member, an alien from the Arathan species, nodded. We made a mistake in assuming the humans would be easy to conquer. But this is something else. They are not just defending their territories. They are organizing, planning, and striking back. For the first time, the Galactic Council was confronted with a truth they could no longer ignore. Humanity had outgrown the perception of being a weak, isolated species. Earth's leaders had kept their military strength hidden, not out of weakness, but out of caution. Now the world was awakening, and it was far stronger than the galaxy had imagined. The chairperson's eyes flickered to the holographic map before him, where the advancing human fleet was now marked in bold red. He clenched his fists, trying to mask his growing frustration. We must move swiftly. We cannot allow the humans to gain any more ground. If we let them gather strength, the consequences could be catastrophic. A member of the Volzeri species, a race known for their technological prowess, adjusted his glasses and examined the data projected before him. We have underestimated them at every turn. Their technology, though not as advanced as ours, has proven to be highly effective. It's not just their ships. Their tactics are unconventional, unpredictable. Another member, a small, insectoid alien from the Beryllian system, buzzed nervously. Perhaps we should reconsider our approach. We cannot fight them in the same way we fought other species. We need to learn from them. The chairperson's eyes narrowed. We don't have time to learn from them. We need results. Now. Across the table, the atmosphere was thick with indecision. The council members were used to power, to dominance, but they had never faced a foe like humanity. The invaders had arrived with an almost mindless speed, overwhelming human outposts with seemingly no strategy, only to find that humanity was far more capable of handling this than they expected. Back on Earth, the response had been swift. World leaders had united in a way they never had before. The age-old divisions that had once separated nations no longer mattered. The threat was global, and humanity's response was united. The military forces, long kept in reserve, were activated. Massive fleets were launched, taking to space in a coordinated effort to protect humanity's colonies. The first battles had been brutal. The aliens had superior numbers and firepower, but humanity's strength lay not in their size, but in their ingenuity. Every fight revealed a new layer of humanity's strategy: ambushes, guerrilla tactics, surprise maneuvers, and quick strikes. The alien invaders, who had initially expected easy victories, found themselves being outsmarted and outflanked at every turn. Back in the council chamber, panic was starting to settle in. The once proud leaders of the galaxy now found themselves scrambling for answers. "We need to fight back," one of the council members said, their voice shaky. "We need to launch a full-scale invasion. We cannot allow them to rise against us." But the Xenar representative raised a hand. "And what if they're not as easily broken as you think? The humans are not like any species we've faced before. Perhaps we should engage in diplomacy instead of war." Diplomacy. The Drakh representative scoffed. "We're talking about a species that has already shown they won't back down. They're fighting for their survival. If they won't accept our peace, we'll be forced to make them submit." The argument grew heated. Some members of the council wanted to escalate the war, believing that humanity could be crushed if given the full might of the galaxy's forces. Others, like the Xenar, feared that such an approach could lead to the extinction of humanity, something that no one had ever anticipated. As the debate raged on, the council members failed to see one critical point: they were no longer in control. They had underestimated humanity at every step, and now their decisions were being driven by fear, not logic. The tables had turned. On Earth, the tides were shifting. The human fleet had launched counteroffensives, retaking lost territories and pushing back against the alien invaders. Despite their technological disadvantage, Humanity's determination and adaptability were becoming apparent to everyone involved. They were not the weak, fragile species the galaxy had once believed them to be. They were warriors, survivalists who had learned to fight not just for themselves, but for the future of their kind. The galaxy watched as humanity's power grew. Some species began to question the Council's decisions. What if humanity was a force that could not be controlled, but only respected? The galaxy had underestimated humanity's potential, and now it was clear that they had made a monumental mistake. The chairperson of the Galactic Council stood, looking around the room at the now silent members. "We've underestimated humanity," he admitted, his voice tinged with regret. "But we cannot afford to ignore them any longer. We must adapt to this new reality." But the Council's words rang hollow. The damage had already been done. The galaxy now knew fear. And it was all because of the species they had once thought so insignificant. The question was no longer whether humanity could survive. It was whether the galaxy could survive humanity. The Galactic Council convened again, this time in haste. The situation was rapidly deteriorating. The initial arrogance of the galaxy's elite species had given way to a creeping sense of dread. The threat of humanity, once dismissed as inconsequential, was now the greatest concern for every member of the Council. Each alien race had its own fears, but now they shared one thing in common: fear of what humanity was capable of when pushed to its limits. The chairperson stood in the center of the room, surrounded by holographic maps and reports. The once luxurious, almost serene atmosphere of the Council chamber had transformed into a tense, high-stakes war room. The alien races, some now beginning to regret their earlier dismissals of humanity, exchanged uneasy glances. No longer did they feel safe in their positions of power. The humans had done the unthinkable. They had turned the tide. "We must find a way to end this conflict before it destroys us all," the chairperson said, his voice taut with urgency. "Our forces are spread thin, and the humans are retaliating with an efficiency we never expected. We need to act quickly, but our options are limited." A representative from the Solori race, known for their intellect and strategic prowess, was the first to speak. "Their military tactics are unlike any we've faced. They fight with a blend of precision and unpredictability. The more we engage them, the more we lose." Another council member, a member of the Thanok species, slammed their fist on the table. "It's not just their military. It's their will to survive. Humans will fight until every last one of them is gone. They don't surrender. They don't break. We've misjudged them completely." The Council's discussions were filled with a mixture of fear, confusion, and frustration. For the first time in centuries, they were not in control of the situation. They were on the back foot, fighting a war they hadn't planned for and didn't understand. Every tactic they tried seemed to be countered by the humans in ways they couldn't predict. Back on Earth, the atmosphere was one of grim determination. The leaders of the human world had seen the devastation caused by the invaders, and they knew that they were fighting not just for their own survival but for the future of the galaxy. The human military had not only responded with force but with ingenuity, developing new strategies and weapons at an almost incomprehensible rate. The battle was not just being fought in space, but on every front. In the minds of strategists, in the hearts of soldiers, and on the ground where civilians turned soldiers. Humanity had learned quickly, adapting to the alien technology and tactics with a resourcefulness that had become a defining trait of their species. They weren't bound by ancient traditions or rigid military doctrines. They were free to innovate, to think outside the box. And that unpredictability had begun to work in their favor. Every victory, no matter how small, was a symbol of their refusal to bow down. At the same time, Earth's allies in the galaxy began to take notice. Some were sympathetic to humanity's struggle, while others were fearful of what would happen if the humans succeeded in their resistance. A handful of galactic species, still unsure of how to approach the situation, offered help in the form of weapons, intelligence, and tactical advice. But for many, the sight of humanity's growing resilience stirred something deeper, a fear of the unknown. The council was beginning to splinter. Some members proposed an immediate peace settlement, hoping to avoid further bloodshed. Others, emboldened by their past victories, argued that humanity's fight was a temporary inconvenience, one that could be crushed with a concentrated assault. But no one could deny the reality. Humanity was no longer a weak, defenseless species. They had crossed a threshold. And now, the galaxy knew fear. The chairperson of the council, torn between the desires for peace and aggression, turned to the screens before him. He saw the reports from the front lines. Human ships, far outnumbered, engaging their alien invaders with ferocity and skill. His mind raced as he considered the options before him. Could they still negotiate with humanity, or had their arrogance sealed their fate? "The humans are not like us," said a soft voice from across the room. It was the voice of a representative from the Ninth, a race known for their deep empathy and understanding of other cultures. "They will not stop fighting. They will not stop until they have either won or died trying. We underestimated them, yes, but now we must understand their strength. They have something we do not, an unbreakable spirit." The chairperson's eyes narrowed. He knew the 9th representative was right. Humanity's resilience was not something they could simply crush with overwhelming power. It was something that had to be respected. The chairperson exhaled sharply, feeling the weight of the situation pressing down on him. "We cannot afford to be blinded by pride," he muttered. "We need to find another way." At that moment, the holographic map of the galaxy flickered, and a new set of data appeared. A massive human fleet was gathering near the border of the Council's territory. It wasn't just a defensive maneuver, it was an offensive one. The humans were preparing to take the fight to them. The Council could no longer ignore the reality. Humanity was not only fighting for survival, they were fighting for dominance. The chairperson stood and turned to face the Council. "We've made a grave mistake," he said, his voice heavy with regret. "It's time we accept that humanity is not a species we can control. We have to change our approach. We need to decide, now, how we will move forward. We cannot allow this war to destroy everything we've built." The council members fell silent. Their eyes turned to the screens, each of them processing the weight of what the chairperson had said. The galaxy's future was now in their hands, and humanity's hand as well. How they would respond to the humans, who had so completely altered the balance of power, would shape the fate of countless civilizations. But one thing was clear. The age of the Galactic Council's unchecked power was over. The galaxy would never be the same again, and humanity had proven, once and for all, that they would not be underestimated. The galaxy was trembling with uncertainty, and the very core of the Galactic Council was shaking. For centuries, the Council had operated with a sense of absolute control. They believed they were untouchable, that no species could challenge the established order. But the rise of humanity, seemingly out of nowhere, had shattered their delusions of invincibility. They were no longer the undisputed rulers of the galaxy. Now, they had to come to terms with a new reality. Humanity was a force that could no longer be ignored or suppressed. The chairperson stood before the council, his once proud figure now bearing the weight of immense responsibility. His mind raced as he thought about the decisions they were about to make. Time was running out, and the consequences of their next move could either bring about peace or plunge the galaxy into further chaos. "We have reached a crossroads," the chairperson declared, his voice calm but firm. "The humans have shown us that they are not just capable of fighting back, they are capable of winning. If we continue down the path of war, we risk alienating the very species we once thought we could control. But if we offer peace, we risk appearing weak in the eyes of the galaxy." A member of the Drakh species, whose race had been warriors for millennia, scoffed at the idea of peace. "We cannot simply give up, chairperson. The humans have proven that they can't be defeated with brute force alone, but we still hold the upper hand. We have superior numbers, superior firepower. If we strike now, We can crush them once and for all. The room erupted in murmurs of agreement from those who favored aggressive tactics. Many of the Council's members, who had long held a sense of superiority over the galaxy's lesser species, couldn't fathom backing down. To them, the idea of negotiating with humanity, especially now, was a sign of weakness they couldn't afford. But others, including the representative from the Xenar species, urged caution. "We've already made one terrible mistake," they said, their voice filled with concern. "Underestimating the humans has cost us dearly. We cannot afford to repeat it. If we continue to push them, we risk losing everything. We must consider a diplomatic solution." The debate grew heated as members of the Council traded arguments. Some favored peace, hoping that a strategic retreat would allow the galaxy to preserve some of its power and dignity. Others insisted on a military strike, believing that if they struck hard and fast, they could teach humanity a lesson they would never forget. As the hours wore on, the debate seemed to go nowhere. The Council was trapped in a cycle of indecision, paralyzed by fear and pride. The human resistance was unlike anything they had faced before, and they had no clear path forward. Every military strategy they had devised had been countered. Every peace offer they had made had been rejected. Humanity had proven that they were not the helpless species they had once thought them to be. On Earth, however, the human response was clear. After months of fierce fighting, humanity had united in a way that no one thought possible. World leaders had set aside their differences, focusing all their energy on surviving the invasion. The human fleet, while smaller than the combined forces of the Council, was fighting with an intensity and coordination that was awe-inspiring. The galaxy's strongest species had underestimated humanity's determination, and now they were paying the price. The human military had become a well-oiled machine, driven by the desire to protect their homes, their families, and their future. They had begun to push the invaders back, reclaiming territory that had once seemed lost. But this war wasn't just about military power. It was about something much deeper. It was about the human will to survive, the refusal to be broken, the desire to protect what was theirs. As the Council members continued to argue, the weight of the situation finally began to sink in. They had underestimated humanity in ways they couldn't undo. The galaxy was no longer the place they had once known, and the humans had made sure of it. The chairperson looked around the room, meeting the eyes of the other members. He could see it in their faces, the fear, the realization that they were no longer in control. "We have failed," he said, his voice quiet but resolute. "We cannot continue as we were. The humans have forced us to change." There was a long pause as the Council members exchanged looks. Some felt shame, others anger, but none could deny the truth in the chairperson's words. The galaxy was on the brink of a new era, one that was being shaped by humanity's unexpected rise. The question now was not whether humanity would survive. It was whether the galaxy would be able to adapt to this new, unpredictable force. Some of the Council members began to look at the situation differently, realizing that perhaps humanity could not be defeated in the way they had hoped. Some wondered if they could find a way to coexist with them, to respect their power rather than crush it. But there were still those who believed that humanity's rise was a threat to their way of life, and they were not prepared to give up their dominance so easily. The decision facing the Council was monumental. Would they engage in a desperate, final war that could destroy both sides, or would they seek to understand the humans and find a way to live in this new galaxy? The chairperson stood taller now, his expression hardening. "We must make a choice that will define the future of our galaxy. But know this, we can no longer ignore humanity. The time of ignoring them is over." He turned to the map of the galaxy before him, his finger tracing the path of humanity's ships as they moved, relentlessly, towards the heart of the Council's domain. "We must either adapt or perish, and the humans have made it clear that they will not be the ones to perish." The room fell silent once again. There was no easy answer, no clear path. The fate of the galaxy rested on their next move. Outside the Council chamber, the galaxy continued to tremble, the ground shifting beneath the feet of those who thought they controlled it all. And in the heart of Earth, humanity's resolve grew stronger with each passing day, each new victory, each battle fought with the knowledge that they were not alone in the universe anymore. They were not weak. They were powerful. They were not afraid. They had become the force that the galaxy would now have to reckon with. The Council had made its mistake. Now, the galaxy would face the consequences, and humanity would lead the charge into a future of their own making. The Galactic Council was now at a crossroads, with the fate of the galaxy hanging in the balance. Every member of the Council felt the weight of their earlier decisions, each one realizing that humanity had become a force they could no longer ignore or control. Their earlier arrogance had led them to underestimate the resilience of the human race, and now they were paying the price. The once proud members of the Council, who had governed the galaxy with an iron grip for centuries, were beginning to realize that their reign was over. The humans had proven to be not just another species, but a force of nature, one that was capable of changing the course of galactic history. In the heart of Earth's command centers, the human leaders knew that their moment had arrived. They were no longer fighting for survival alone. They were fighting to redefine the balance of power in the galaxy. Humanity's unity, born out of necessity, had become their greatest strength. Every nation, every leader, and every soldier stood behind the same banner now, driven by an unbreakable will to defend their home and their future. On the Council, the debate raged on. There were still factions calling for an all-out war with humanity. Some members believed that a brutal, decisive strike could break the human will, that if they hit hard enough, the humans would cower like the other species they had conquered. But those voices were growing quieter, drowned out by the cold reality of the situation. Humanity had fought back with a strength no one had anticipated, and their tenacity had only increased the longer the war dragged on. Are we really prepared to destroy the entire galaxy in our attempt to defeat them? Asked the Yanth representative again. This time, their voice was not filled with the quiet empathy it had carried before. It was edged with fear and urgency. If we go down this path, we risk everything. We risk annihilation. One of the more aggressive members of the Council, a representative of the Zoran species, stood up sharply. If we back down now, we lose everything. The galaxy cannot be ruled by a species that is unwilling to protect its own sovereignty. Humanity must be taught a lesson it will never forget. But the chairperson of the Council, who had remained silent until now, stood up slowly. His mind was weighed down with the burden of the decisions that lay ahead. He had always believed in the superiority of the Council, but even he could see the futility of continuing the war in this direction. "We are being foolish," he said, his voice firm but calm. "Humanity has shown us that they are not like any species we have ever encountered. They are adaptable, resourceful, and most importantly, they are united in a way we cannot comprehend." He paused, letting the room take in his words. His eyes swept across the members, seeing the doubt beginning to creep into their minds. "We must either face them in battle and risk total destruction, or find another way forward. And I believe that the only way forward is peace. If we do not make peace, we are condemning ourselves to a future where we will not survive." The room fell into a heavy silence. For the first time in a long while, there was no immediate response. The Council members exchanged glances, each one processing the chairperson's words in their own way. The idea of peace with humanity seemed impossible, even absurd to some, but the more they considered it, the more it began to make sense. Humanity was a force they had underestimated, and they had paid the price for that arrogance. To continue down the same path could lead to the Council's extinction. Meanwhile, on Earth, the human leadership had been preparing for this moment. The military had been relentless in pushing back against the invading forces, their tactics evolving at an astonishing pace. New alliances were being formed, and the human fleets had started to move deeper into Council territory, no longer on the defensive, but on the offensive. Humanity had learned to harness the strengths of their own kind and adapt the technology they had seized from their enemies. They were not as advanced as the Council's races, but their ability to improvise, to innovate in the heat of battle, had made them nearly unstoppable. It wasn't just their technology that was evolving. It was their determination, their grit, and their willingness to sacrifice everything for the future of their species. Back in the council chamber, the chairperson addressed the room again. "I propose that we send an emissary to Earth, a representative from our ranks to negotiate a peace settlement. We cannot afford another battle. The humans have proven that they are not a threat to us in the way we thought. We must come to terms with them, or we will all perish." There was murmuring among the council members, but the chairperson's words struck a chord with many. The idea of negotiating with humanity, once an unthinkable proposition, was now their only chance at survival. The Yanth representative nodded, understanding the gravity of the situation. "We must put aside our pride and acknowledge the truth. Humanity has proven themselves to be our equals, and in some ways, they are more than that. We must adapt." And so, a new resolution was formed. The Galactic Council would send an emissary to Earth, not to conquer but to seek peace. They would offer humanity the chance to lead, to share in the governance of the galaxy. The Council could no longer hold the power they once had. The humans had shown them a new way, one in which strength and unity were the keys to survival. It was a humbling moment for the Council, as they realized that the galaxy they had once ruled was no longer theirs to control. Humanity had risen from the ashes of their oppression, and now they stood as equals. The galaxy would never be the same again, and the Council knew it. As the emissary ship was prepared for its journey to Earth, the members of the Council sat in silence, each contemplating the new era that was about to begin. The galaxy had been turned upside down, and there was no going back. The age of the Galactic Council's dominance was over, and a new age had begun, one where humanity would play a pivotal role in shaping the future. In the coming days, as the emissary ship made its way toward Earth, the galaxy held its breath. The decision had been made. Humanity had earned its place in the stars, and now the rest of the galaxy would have to come to terms with that fact. There was no turning back from this new reality, and the balance of power had irrevocably shifted. The Council's last hope for survival lay in the hands of the humans, and the galaxy now knew one undeniable truth. Humanity was not just a species to be feared. They were a species that would change the galaxy forever.